You can tell her, you can tell her anything. She's a real good listener. You can tell her anything.
Yo, what's up? It's your girl, Father Longlegs. You know me, Daddy T. This is You Can Tell Me Anything, the podcast where I have comedians and I guess artists. I have to redo that intro, but I won't ever. I always talk straight through it. Mistakes at all, because since quarantine started, it's really expanded to filmmakers, artists, and one time a journalist who unraveled the dark, what's it called? The dark money of the Koch brothers. So it's people who want to confess things that I want to talk to get off their chest, and that's a roundabout way to get to my intro. But I'm excited to get my guest on today. We actually met in the Bay Area, which is where I'm from, but we haven't lived in the same city, even though we've lived in cities that we've both lived in. And he's very, very funny. I'm excited to have him on now that we can do Zoom podcasts. He is the co-host of the show Bad Asians, which I have done an episode of. They're currently on hiatus, but there's a good backlog, so go check it out. It's David Nguyen. What's up?
Hey, thanks for having me. How's it going?
I'm good. My energy is always way too high for these intros, and I will not apologize.
Anybody ever matches your energy? Because I feel like I can never match anybody's energy.
Oh, sometimes people clap. Well, but I feel like that's your comedy style, and it's funny. Like, I like that. The first time I saw you perform, because you're such a good writer, I remember being like, I didn't know you because I didn't start in the Bay, but I was like, obviously I want you to do well, because you know how it is when you see a fellow brother or sister. You're like, let's see how they are. But I like that your energy, you start so, that is how you talk on stage. But then, it's zingers, and then you'll just move on in a way that's, I think works really well. I end up overdoing it, and I have to pull back sometimes, because I'll be like, I'm delighting myself. And then people are like, why are you laughing at yourself? It's bad for comedy. It's like a dad. My humor's very fatherly.
But don't you find that people are endeared by that? Because I always feel like the opposite.
Know. Do you think? I wonder. It's interesting when you say that, because when I started off, I do think there was a what do you call it? A bias that worked in my favor, because people expected, a small little Asian girl to not. Well, I say small, but I'm tall. But just a unassuming Asian girl to not be that funny, especially if I'm cracking up on myself. So then maybe in a way it becomes disarming when they actually laugh, and then they're like, oh, haha, she also is doing it wrong, and in a way that works. But I wonder if that has to do with some of the biases of the audience, because now I feel like I've had to at least learn how to hold my stage presence better. I don't know. Do you feel that it's different, obviously, as an Asian guy, but that sometimes the biases in the beginning, before you were well known and people knew, audiences knew who you were, helped you because they expected oh, he's gonna be, if he's quiet or shy, it won't be funny. But then they're like, whoa.
Yeah, definitely. I felt that starting out, and then for many years after that. But now I'm trying to shift it where I'm trying not to be so condescending about the audience.
Yeah.
Why am I putting that bias onto them?
Yeah.
It's why am I bringing my baggage about how the world feels about Asian people and assuming that we're not funny onto them, especially because, you live in cities you're in LA, but the Bay Area, New York, they have Asian people out there.
Oh yeah, Ali Wong's from
sure.
the Bay. I think Constance Wu. I mean, she's not funny, but she's also the names that you hear are all from the Bay.
But I'm pretty sure they've interacted with Asian people, and they've seen, they've had a sampling of them. And I would like to think that they encountered funny Asian people before. So it's why am I going up on stage thinking y'all don't fuck with me? But because I used to think that, and it's okay, well, this gives me the permission to do whatever I want because you guys have no expectations of me. And so I can go out with my style of comedy, and then they would enjoy it. And it does live up to the idea also, because with my energy, it's okay, they don't, if they don't fuck with me, it's because of me. It's never because of the Asianness, It's this guy's low energy. Why am I going to be entertained by this? And then you have to I have to win them over with my personality. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that applies for all comedians. But yeah, we all have like a start from a slightly different. The biases may be different, but I think if you zoom back enough, it's like nobody starts. I mean, if you're starting like you're already like I don't know, influencer doing stand up for the first time, then like yes, I guess that's an example of where it doesn't matter if you're bad, people are there to see you. But then that's almost opposite where it harms you because you can't get good.
yeah.
So I think most comedians, even the privileged white, ones that fit into the mold of what we expect historically for them to look like, they still have to come in with whatever the gap is from what people expect to what they are, even
Right.
if it's backwards. Yeah, you said something interesting. You said, what do you say? Oh, the like putting that on the audience, but I think that resonates because I feel like that started as a defense mechanism for me. But you see it in like the one I'm thinking of right now is like the Bernie Mac, like, I'm not afraid of you. But like that is so iconic, but it is that energy. I mean, it's in a different way and it comes out, it's expressed totally differently than, me and open micer 10 years ago or whatever doing it. But that feeling of like, everyone has that feeling where you come out and you're like, I want to do well, but also I'm scared of the audience, but also like they want me to do, like there's this
Right.
push and pull, but ultimately everyone wants to enjoy themselves.
Yeah.
You just don't know if it's going to happen, so you have your like defenses up in case that it doesn't. So yeah.
I mean, I think we go back and forth with like how to deliver your comedy, right? Like especially if you're going on not first, right? You get a chance to evaluate the audience. It's like, what kind of audience is this? And then you have to go and figure out whether or not you want to modify your comedy in any way to that audience. It's like, do you want, like, everybody wants to be funny, but like sometimes we want to be selfish. It's like, I'm going to stick to what I do because this is my art. But at the same time, we're all entertainers. It's like, these people paid money. I should give them their money's worth. So it's that push and pull. And now I'm at a point where it's like, all right, I'm just going to do my comedy and it's for them, because like they've never experienced my comedy take it how that sounds. It's like they've never experienced my style of comedy from me. So it's like I have to give it to you the as is, and so you can decide if you like it or not. But like at least you got a chance to decide for yourself instead of me deciding for you.
Oh, I love that because you wouldn't go see like. And and I'm thinking of some like iconic artists like Andy Warhol has a style and some people didn't like it, and now it's like become when you go past the point where you're new and that's just your thing, then it doesn't really matter if people like it or not, it just is your thing. Now I don't think people go like, I don't like anyway. You either like it or you don't, and it's fine. But before, like when you're experiencing it, it's like it'd be weird if he was like, oh, I don't think this audience will like me, and then so he paints a Rembrandt that's like, but they wanted to see what the hype was, and they let them decide that it's not for them. Like that's fine. It's like people who go, I don't like the Beatles. It's like, all right, like they're still the Beatles.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
fine. You have your own opinion.
Right.
I love that.
It's like you can go to a restaurant and there's like many different styles. Like somebody can like make a dish specifically for you, and they're like, oh, I enjoy this. It's like special because it's like they asked me about what I like. But then sometimes people don't know what they want to eat that day. Like they can't articulate it. So it's like, and a chef can just still make something amazing, and then you can, it's like, oh my God, this is like the best thing I ever had. Like I would never have had that if the chef didn't just give it to me,
Wow, I like that analogy a lot. Speaking of things I like, I always start with a good confession. We got way into it already, which I love. But before we get too far, it's just a way to start on a positive note to get to know you. It's really like a humble brag. I call it a good confession. Don't worry too much about being a full-on confession. It's just anything positive or something you're proud of, something you're excited about, pretty much anything that skews positive in any direction. It doesn't even have to be accomplishments or career stuff. But is there something good you want to share with me?
Yeah, my wife and I are trying to have a baby.
Oh my God, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we haven't done it yet, but like we're in the process of it, so.
That's exciting. Oh my
That is
God.
exciting.
Because I know, I mean, it's always weird when you like are friends with the people. I mean, on podcasts we always like don't say names and stuff, but I know your wife. She's lovely, great. I've worked with her and you on interview stuff. for her magazine, and that's very exciting to hear. So I guess pre-congratulations is what I'll say. But and also, yeah, I guess I haven't congratulated you guys since you got married. So congratulations on that.
Oh,
too.
thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
And surviving the pandemic and moving across country. That's a lot to take in.
Yeah, it's been a year to say
I
the least.
know. It truly has. It's been so. I started this pod. I mean, I know you're familiar with it because we've talked before, but we've never really been in the same city when I used to record in person. But I started it because I grew up without a lot of access to like therapy or mental health, and we actually talked about it on your podcast. But I really enjoyed once I started going to therapy the feeling of being able to like talk about things not always like big or scandalous, just little random things of like, oh, why do I do this, and then all of a sudden you unravel something. And so that's sort of like the subconscious like foundation behind it, in a way where I was like, I also want to get comedians on and just have a loose, funny conversation. But I do, before we get into like the loose, funny stuff, I always like to ask like, what's your experience with therapy? Or if you haven't gone, it's okay. Everyone has a different story. But what do you do to sort of like self-regulate your emotions? Do you have like a confidant you talk to, or do you just like bottle up all inside? Just to get a sense of like where everyone starts from, and it's always different. So there's no right or wrong answer.
Oh, yeah. So never been to therapy, and God willing, I will never go to therapy.
Okay, that's a strong opinion there. Is there a reason, or just from like personal or like kind of more generic bias reasons?
So I'm very open to everybody going to therapy. Like I think there's a lot of positive from it. I wish more people could go to therapy. I just don't think I need it. I think I'm a pretty self-aware individual, and I'm constantly like doing self-evaluation of myself. And then like I read a lot of I study a lot of philosophy. Like I study political science, so part of it is studying a lot of philosophy and some psychology. And so I've always been a very like self-reflective individual, and I came to a point where I don't know how it got in my head, was like I don't believe I'm owed a perfect life.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Were you raised with religious or any sort
No.
of like back? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So sort of you had your own blank slate to decide what you believed in.
Yeah, more or less. Like my parents are Buddhist, but they never like I would go through the motions of like doing traditional things, but
Gotcha.
like they never imposed a belief structure on me.
Okay, yeah. Buddhism is like, my mom used to say, which I actually realized like that's probably not true, but because that's what she told me, that's how I thought about it. I can see why she said this, but she used to say Buddhism is a philosophy, not a religion, which honestly is kind of racist, not racist, but whatever the version of religionist thing to say. And my mom wasn't religious, but I think she said that because she meant it in a good way. But when I think about it now, I'm like, that seems a little condescending. But Buddhism doesn't push it. It's not like evangelical in that sense. It's a way of, well, maybe I'm wrong, but this was my impression growing up in the Bay, because it was like, I went to a Buddhist Chinese school that was never about converting us, but always about just like practicing and showing the way, and all the stuff that we learned, like translated to living a good life without the like being kind to others or whatever, without the like, because Buddha does this. It was just like, do this because it's good. And then I would do it instead of like, Jesus would have wanted this.
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense, but also feel free to correct me, because I do have these blind spots. And until I said that out loud just now, I didn't realize how condescending that sounded. So I don't take it back because I said it, but I would like to evolve from that thought.
Well, I think you and I would come both from like the same kind of ignorance in the best way possible, right? Because it's like I'm not religious enough to be able to like dissect the two, and it kind of sounds like semantics. It's like religion versus philosophy, because if you want to break it down, it's like religion itself is just a philosophy with a person or a figure attached to it, because Buddhism, in I guess like you're not supposed to worship Buddha, like, because it's like a guy, it's like don't like it's not a deity, right?
It's the idea of self, right? And I think
Right.
there's different. I don't know enough about the religious practice. I just know the stuff that like the teachers would tell us about living. So it's
Right.
like, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and like just going back to like my upbringing, it's like, yeah, my parents never broke down like the religion itself or like the practices itself. I had to like learn that later on in
Uh-huh.
school. It's like I found out like Buddha was originally Indian. I was like, that's weird, because
Uh-huh.
like I've only seen him as the golden Asian figure, right?
But
Or like,
that's a different. So there's like Siddhartha, which I remember learning about in school,
right.
who is like one Buddha. But there's also you can become a Buddha, right?
Right. Again, it's like it's a whole thing, right? So if you trace the Buddhism, like I went to the Asian Museum, and you start off in like the South Asian room, and then as you go to east, Buddha looks less like Indian, and he like
Oh,
slowly adopts more East Asian features, kind of like the way Jesus. If you start,
erasure.
yeah,
Ooh.
if you start in the Middle East, he looks more,
Yeah.
Middle Eastern, and then as you get to Europe, it's more like white.
Wow.
So it's just an interesting thing that we all kind of just adapt these deities to have the features that we want them to have.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, it makes sense when you put it that way, but it also it's like we know that history we're constantly evolving. So then when you said that, I was trying to think like what are we currently in the process of evolving
Hmm.
without even realizing? Like
Yeah.
so I'm like, who do our people I don't know why I thought this, but my first thought was dogs because I keep hearing how dogs are. My sister's dog learned to open a door because he was
Hmm.
anxious, and I don't think it'll be long before more dogs do more things like that. And we love dogs, but
I see.
this is a really unhinged theory. That's not actually a theory because I'm saying it right now. I haven't thought it through. But I think because Elon Musk just hosted SNL, and I don't love him, but he does look like a dog in a not in a mean way. In like I think the people who like him and don't really know what the harmful things he's doing,
I see.
he looks like an endearing, like he says things that are kind of like, "Bah, I don't know, I'm a cute little dog." And I get that part. Like, I see that too. I don't hate him, but I just think he gets away with a lot of things that should be scrutinized because he has like a baby face and kind of like says it like, "I don't know, I just love space." In a way that I'm like, oh my God, our, our deities are evolving to live with dogs.
Well, he also has that. He also loves that a cryptocurrency that has a dog.
Dogecoin! Yeah.
So maybe that's what it
He
is.
does kind of, yeah, but it's that mentality where the dogs really get away with a lot of things
Maybe
because,
he
like,
makes that same face as the dog meme.
he
That's
does.
all that coin.
Oh man,
But
we really
you
went
know,
off track. But yeah, the Buddhism.
if you want to speak on like the evolution of people, you can just take a look at like the Kardashians and how they have
Oh
an
yeah.
effect on the way a lot of women
Yes.
present themselves and like what their
True.
idea of beauty is, because they moved away from your traditional skinny white woman into whatever ambiguous um, kind of thicker
Yeah,
heavy
juicy
eyebrows
booties. That's
and
even interesting because there's a erasure there too. Like they're
yeah.
Armenian, but like a
Hmm.
lot of people in America don't understand what
Like
Armenian.
Armenians don't look like them.
They don't all look like it, but a lot
Yeah.
of that's because they have had a lot of work done in Photoshop. But
But like
Armenian,
that's the Kardashian look though. It's
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
like
yeah.
this ambiguous.
It's a
What is
weird
this? It's
magazine.
but yeah, it's a very like you can only describe it as like that Kardashian look. But like like so
But
many
it's not.
women
But yes and no,
strive
because
to
in
look like
LA,
that.
I feel like, well, that's the thing is even in LA, I remember open mic, not open mic, but I say open micers. I guess it sounds derogatory, but I just mean like these are just generic comedians who they're not bad, but like I'm not saying like I went to a show. Just like when you randomly start to hear zeitgeist kind of punchlines, people would make. Mostly white people would make like it seemed like an okay target to make fun of Armenians. This is pre the world being
I
aware of
see.
Artsca, which is like kind of crazy because it's like there was a genocide before this too, but people weren't aware, so people were just joking about Armenians in LA in a way because I think a lot of the areas that are more traditional Armenian are very wealthy and they also stick to each other. So like
Hmm.
people who were very white and away from that, but also live in LA have this idea that it's like kind of like making fun of Italians where they're like, well, they seem to be doing fine, so we're going to make fun of the fact that they're hairy. And you're like,
Got it.
I don't know if anything is good when you generalize. But that was a stereotype for a while. It's just like wealthy, like kind of like Beverly Hills, like sort of influencer looking types with a lot of money and designer stuff, but also like stuck to themselves, which is, I think, Kardashian like. But it is weird that we've also erased I mean, they've erased it to fit in, but like we don't. People, they are white. They are, but then we kind of erased the culture and all that. I don't know. I find it all that stuff is really fascinating to me when we.
Well, like, I don't know, like for me, like Kim and like I think it was Chloe and Courtney, those three are Armenian, but the other two girls are white.
Oh, the
Like,
Jenners,
The
Jenners
they're
are
white, but
yeah,
like
they're for sure white.
they're for sure white, but they have like these Armenian like features
From plastic surgery. Have
from
you
plastic
seen
surgery. So it's like,
Kylie
and then
when
from
she was baby.
yeah, and then from them, it's like very young people who were influenced by them are taking on those type of features. So it's like, what is this?
Did you ever watch the Goofy movie?
Yes.
You know the cute girl in Goofy movie that he has a crush on?
Oh yeah,
She is to me what the Kardashians.
I see.
Do you know what I mean? It's not anything. It's like a cartoony cute, like it's like
It always goes back to dogs with you, huh?
Oh yeah, she's a dog. It's weird because I'm like I like grew up on Disney, so I think that's why I can compartmentalize. Like, no kink shaming against furries, but I'm not a furry. But like it's that line where I can see how someone might cross into it, but I'm like, but it's not, because what they did is they distilled hot person features and then made it appropriate for kids, sort of, by making it not a person. But then it's like, we still know what you're doing. So I feel like Kardashians capture that, like, it's not about who you are, how tall you are, what color you are. It's just about being hot. Like, it's like.
But they did like redefine hotness too.
Yes,
It's like,
yeah,
you know,
that's
curvy is in, and whether or not you like that, they get credit for it. You know.
Yeah. They are,
It's-
yeah. Well, there were some, foundation
are
layers, like J-Lo.
One of the
definitely,
pillars of it. Yeah.
I feel like started that. Nicki Minaj was around. Well, I don't know. Yeah, you're right. They really popularized it in a way that broadened, like they didn't, in a way, taking away, like the erasure or taking away the boundaries actually made it accessible to white people, which I'm not saying is good or bad, but like when you get icons like J-Lo, who obviously was mainstream, but because people branded her as, you know, the Latino singer with a curvy booty, it didn't necessarily make it accessible for young white teenagers to want to look
Right.
like her.
Yeah.
Because they think, oh, I'll just like the Latina singer. And there's this weird divide. It's neither good or bad, it's just the transition of it, because it's almost like the erasure helped erase the lines, but then there's a weird in-between uncomfortable transition where people get into that weird appropriating like gray area because they don't know where this comes from. They just like how it looks.
Or they don't know where it's going either.
Yeah. But this is all, I mean, I always take the stance in fashion a little more forgiving, not in a sense like, oh, let's forgive it all, but I like to be like, let's look at what's wrong now, and then kind of like what I was saying about my own thoughts, and then evolve, because I think it leaves room for evolution. But fashion to me is always like a little more like, I'm like, let's just like see what happens, because it's aesthetic and less.
But if you take that approach, it's like, oh, you missed it. That's how.
Yeah. I don't mean it like, let's let everyone appropriate, but I mean in fashion, as opposed to being like, here's a line, if you're white, you can never do this. I feel that could be harmful for growth, because then it starts to really stereotype cultures.
I see.
But if you take it from let's actually talk about what, in the moment, if something offends, let's talk about it and figure it out and go, hey, don't do this because of this. That allows for, I just like want a world that's hot. And I feel like generally speaking, fashion comes from a place of wanting to be hot. Not in a standard, you know, stick thin white girl way, but in a whatever appeals to a mass and people like and delights tends to be where trends come from. And sometimes people make mistakes and they should be reprimanded and suffer consequences. I don't mean like, let's ignore it. But on the outside of that, if we get more hot people, I think it's a good thing. I don't know. Is this really hot take? I'm going to get canceled. Wow, I really derailed your therapy background. But I just to wrap up because I thank you for sharing the your history with how you know, I don't know, what's the word? Your therapy history, your mental health history. I'm curious because being raised by Buddhist parents that didn't push that onto you, like, were they aware of like sort of the mental health like in terms of like the more Western American sort of way of looking at like, oh, going to therapy or psychology and talking about your feelings, like what was that like with, because I think Buddhist parents probably are more aware of self, but I know also typically immigrant parents are less, at least our generation, less open to going to like a therapist over a doctor.
It's hard to say because like we never really talked about it. So like I don't necessarily know their feelings. Well, I will say is like my mom probably is a little bit more open to it because like I've suggested her go to therapy, and she's like, I want to, but then like she never does.
Why did you suggest she goes to therapy?
Just because like she's had a hard life, you know, like every immigrant person should go to therapy. Like I have a joke where it's like if I had the money to go to therapy, I wouldn't use it on myself. I would check my mom in first.
That's nice.
Because like they need it more than I do.
They do.
I never escaped a war. What do I need therapy for right now?
Yeah, I really feel like the more that I go to therapy, the more I'm just like slowly helping my mom. You know what I mean? Because it's like the first layer was me figuring out why I was mad, and then going, she did the best she could, and then going, oh, she really didn't, like, you start to understand, like, oh, in order for them to have, it all had to come down to me, and they loved me that much.
Right.
It means that they really had a lot to, like didn't start with a lot, and then it kind of goes backwards where you're like it goes from being like, I'm mad at my parents, I blame them for everything, to like, oh my God, my parents are children that need my help to emotionally become adults. Like,
Well, I don't know about that.
well, I guess I'm projecting now, but there's a sense of like going from me feeling like an abandoned child to me helping myself grow up to me going, I may have grown up beyond the level that my parents had when they were taking care of me as a child, and then going, oh, I want to help.
Yeah, well, it could just be for me. It's like as I get older, I realize how old my parents are, right? And it's like, okay, well, and this could be like an Asian thing, where it's like, okay, now it's time for me to take care of them.
Yeah.
And so, but I just go and think about a lot. It's like, okay, so the difficulties immigrant parents go through, it's like compared to what we go through, and it's like, well, I need therapy. It's like, yes, sure, but they totally need therapy.
Yeah.
And so, but like I also joke, is like, if I go to therapy, I get better, but if my mom goes to therapy, she gets better, then I get better, then everybody around her gets better, because it's like she went through this thing, and then she has to like project that onto other people, right? So it's you know, if you want to go into philosophy, it's like, you know, it's the greater good.
Yeah.
You take care of that person, and then everybody around them will, because like, and also you go to therapy, you're gonna blame everything on your mom or dad anyway, so you might as well just expedite the process. It's like, don't treat the symptom, treat the cause. Like, go send them.
That's so funny. I mean, yeah, for the record, I don't blame my mom, but I think there were, when I first started going in my 20s, there's a lot to get through. And of course, in the beginning, when you're blaming yourself, especially Western therapists, like I had a white therapist, she was very much like, it's okay to not like be mad at your mom, but I would push against that. But then it helped me once I got through that, like processing the anger, to then forgive. And I think some people are afraid, myself included, to like face the anger because we don't want to not be respectful, but it's actually respectful to want to get through it instead of pushing it down.
Well, I think for like so many Asian Americans, like I talk to, and then even and this is not the best representation of it, but like you see it online, like with you know, subtle Asian traits kind of ideas, where it's like it all goes back to the parents. It's like, okay, reevaluate your relationship with your parents and think about it a little harder before you put everything on them like that, you know?
Because then by default, it means they got a lot to blame their parents on, which is true. And then you go 2 generations back and you're like, they're fucking like with a civil war. But and it's like, okay, well, like, come on. Like, we're really just out here complaining we can't be comedians, and it's like.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you think about like your Asian parents and all the nonsense that they put you through, but then you evaluate your life, you're fine.
Yeah.
You're fine. Like, they, as parents, they nailed it because of where you are in life, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I don't ever blame them.
And generally speaking, I'm sure like there's Asian people who are struggling, and you know, But you can't put that on
Yeah,
them
it's this
either.
idea of a greater good. It's not about being an individual where it's like you took away my potential, because like there's always gonna be things in your life, like down to like random strangers who cut you off on traffic and made you late to an interview, but you don't think about that. It's just easier to blame someone you know.
Yeah.
But I really like that way of thinking. It kind of, to tie that back before we take a break, like into the fashion thing, it kind of is similar philosophy of like, it's not about saying it's all okay and to like ignore the bad, but it's saying that like where we're trying to go is a nice place where everything's good and everyone gets a piece of the good. But yeah, let's address the problems as we get there. Okay, let's take a quick break. When we get back, we'll get your confession. And we're back. David, the time has come. Is there anything you would like to tell me?
I'm pretty grateful for COVID-19.
Okay, let's unpack that. What do you mean by that? Like in the way that you've grown through it, or like specifically, has there been a big transformation?
So, my dad died last year, almost a week to the day. So his
Oh,
anniversary will be May 16th.
I'm
I was
sorry.
living in New. Oh, thanks. It's always like I don't know how to always respond to that.
No, it's okay. Yeah,
I'm
I
sorry.
understand that. In the
No,
sense-
like it's a me thing. It's like I understand where it's coming from, but like what are the words for like I'm sorry?
I think you handled it well. I feel like I felt the same about my brother for a while, and I think it also is weird to not, I'm sure the story is gonna be important to know that, but it's also weird if I don't respond. So then
Yeah, exactly.
I don't mean to, I think you did it fine. But I didn't know that, so I do want to express my apologies. But I also know that you're not here to be like, and we're done. Let's just, so you did fine.
Right. So my dad died last May, and so he died of cancer. He was diagnosed in November of 2019, and I was living in New York at the time. And so when that happened, it's like, all right, I need to move home to be with him, right?
Yeah.
But I was financially trapped because I had this lease, and it didn't end until July 2020,
Oh, wow.
right? And
Yeah.
they said
Because
he
you
had a
just
couple-
moved to, or no, you've been there for,
I was there for like a year and a half.
yeah, because the time is weird with the 2020 kind of put everything on pause. But I remember
Right.
visiting you before.
Yeah,
And then you
right.
had just moved there. Okay.
Right. So, and I had made trips out there like early in the year of 2020, like when COVID was just like still a thing we made fun of,
Yeah.
like very lightheartedly.
Yeah.
We didn't take it seriously, and I didn't know it was gonna be what it was, right? But in let's see, I want to say, when did it really get bad? Like February-ish, March-ish?
It happened really fast when in the
Yeah.
second week of March, like the NBA
Yeah.
and Coachella and everything shut down, and then
Right.
everyone was putting out those like stay in for 2 weeks.
Right. So, you could, like, being in New York, like, there was a slow
Yeah.
ramp up because work got slower and slower. And you started noticing things were getting shut down, like you said, with big events. And then you would have people come in and ask, like, hey, how are things? Like, are you concerned at all? And especially because of the way New York was hit, I was like, nah, I'm just going to live it day by day until something tells me that, I have to really be concerned about it. Because for me, I was just going about my day like it was just a regular day. I would go to work, I would work, and I would come home. And you would try to do some comedy. And one day...
Were shows not getting like, were people starting to
Not
cancel?
yet.
Not
Yeah, not yet. But then when I went into work one day, I was told, everything's being shut down. Go home until further notice.
Whoa, yeah.
And so I got furloughed, right? And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I don't know what's happening, but if I'm going to be staying home, I might as well be home in the Bay with my
Yeah.
dad who's dying, right? So I was able to, with the furlough, go on unemployment. And with the unemployment, like, that allowed me to pay off my rent, because it's not like they were going to stop. They weren't going to let me stop paying rent. even though they said they would. It's just like, no, just
Yeah,
keep paying the rent,
landlords.
right? Yeah. So yeah, like the landlord didn't like send out emails about nothing. It's like, oh hey, we're in this together. Don't worry about the rent. They're like,
Uh-huh.
give me my money. It's like,
Yeah.
I know you have unemployment, so
Oh man.
yeah. I went on unemployment and I just flew home, and then it just kept continuing. So I was in the Bay Area just collecting unemployment until like through my dad's passing, and then through July when I could break my or end the lease, like not renew my lease. So it's like I don't know if without COVID happening, I would have been able to do that financially, and I got to spend like an extra couple of months with my dad
Oh, that's
because he
nice.
was moved into my older sister's house, and that's where I was crashing throughout the early part of last year. So it's like, yes, this thing that affected the world greatly, and people died, and
Yeah.
people are still dying, and we still haven't really seen the effects of it. Like what's post COVID gonna be like, um, and it disrupted a lot of people. People lost their jobs. People went through a lot of difficulties because you hear about like domestic violence. I'm pretty sure there's a multitude of issues that we have to work through. But like for me, it's like, oh, well, if this thing didn't happen, then I would have completely not been there while my dad wasted away. So it's like I
Right.
can't help but feel grateful for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that because you don't it doesn't you're not saying like when you explain it in context I understand the urge to want to like add the disclaimers because it can feel like, oh, I don't want to be insensitive because it's caused a lot of difficulties. But the reality is it's like you said, it's globally causing a lot of difficulties in
Right.
a way that's like the rest of the world doesn't stop. Like hard things don't stop. Like other
Right.
people who were going on unemployment before still are unemployed. And cancer doesn't stop. So it's what you're saying. You're not grateful that this happened in because you're glad all the bad stuff happened, but you're like the timing of it ended up giving you this chance, which
Right.
I think is like really beautiful because it's still very hard to deal with that, especially you're as an adult. It's sometimes hard to be with your parents when work and things are happening, even during normal times. But to have a chance to really spend that time, I think
Yeah, and
it's
especially
something
with
to be
like
grateful for.
especially with COVID, like you're locked down. So it's like it's
Yeah.
not like I was in the Bay and then I was out and about throughout the day doing things, going to shows, like going out to eat, hang out with friends. It's like, oh, I was locked down with
Yeah.
my dad. So
Were you able to like spend quality time? Like what? Like I don't know how close you and your dad were before, but I know sometimes like as adults, like having these more adult conversations as you have lived away and then come back together. Were you able to sort of like see a new version of your dad? Like spending time with him, or is it sort of just like I don't know if this makes sense. Like sometimes, do you know what I mean? Like you're a kid and then you have this relationship, and then you grow up, and then you kind of have these new sort of like adult conversations. Did your relationship sort of evolve together as you guys spent more time, or what was it like being able to spend so much time with him as an adult?
I think you just appreciate the time, not necessarily like you just appreciate like the quality of the time, and not necessarily like, oh, we have a new dynamic in our relationship. I didn't really evaluate it like that. The conversations do change where it's like, you should buy a house here, you know, like it's that kind of stuff. But I guess he always talked about that with me too as a child, because like as the oldest son, you were expected to take care of the parents. So I just remember it's like, remember to take care of me. It's like, and then like buy a house here. It's like that's more or less the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, we just spent a lot of time doing how our relationship always was. We would watch TV. He
Aw.
would joke around. We would play cards, things like that.
Oh, that's nice.
But I think, he kept the same energy throughout. So
Oh, that's
his
good.
thing was like he didn't want people to worry. So he didn't tell his girlfriend he had cancer. He didn't tell his brothers and
Oh man.
sisters back home in Vietnam he had cancer because he was convinced that he was going to beat it.
Oh, gotcha.
He's like, I have 50 more years at least. I was like, okay. And like when a doctor tells you, it's like, you have 6 months left, that doesn't, for me, I couldn't conceptualize 6 months.
True.
It's like, no. He has at least 2 or 3 years. But no,
Yeah.
like that's 6 months. Like those doctors nailed it.
Wow.
So, but like the time we spent together, a lot of it was like he was so tired because of what cancer does to a person's body, and you like when you hear about cancer, unless you like, and you see it on TV, it's not the same as like witnessing it like happen because it's like it's a slow process, like them losing all this weight, losing all this hair, just like being tired all the time, where it's not like you sat up and like have all these fun conversations and
Yeah, yeah.
reconnecting and getting to know life and like squeezing every ounce of like precious time out of them, like cherish these moments because you'll never get them back, kind of
It's
thing.
just
It's
being
like,
around and almost just
yeah,
like being normal. Yeah.
again, yeah, it's a day-to-day thing, and even if a person like I'm sure everybody grapples with like their mortality differently, it's like denial or acceptance or what have you, but yeah, for the most part it's just like, oh, today's a day, and like looking back, there were like signs up the last 2 weeks his health really deteriorated, right? But like I didn't consider that as like, oh, it's happening soon.
Yeah.
I was
Well,
like,
that's
oh,
probably a good thing because
yeah.
then you don't want the end to be full of work. If you
Mm-hmm.
know in some way that it's happening, you still want every day that you are with him to feel like a day you're with him, not a day you're.
Yeah, but I mean, I only because like I'll just say like the last 2 weeks is like no, like one day didn't feel different to me than the other than like, oh, he's a little bit more tired today. It's like, oh, he's struggling a little bit harder today. It's like, oh, like there was one day where like things got really bad because I think we had this hospice care, and they're cool, but they're not the best either because they're kind of like on call. And so when like things happen, they're like, yeah, I think on their end, it's like, yeah, he has cancer. What do you think is going to happen? But it's like, hey, my dad is like experiencing like, he can't breathe or he's having stomach pains. It's like, yeah, just increase the pain medication. But like one time we increased the pain medication and like it caused him to like have like an episode where like he couldn't remember, because like when you're frail and you're going through all these changes in your body, I think the medication can like really mess you up. So like he had like this short-term memory loss and it kind of freaked everybody out.
Yeah.
But then like the next day he was like, I'm fine again.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's hard. I'm so
yeah.
sorry. I mean, it's in. Did he have any idea? Like you said, you guys didn't have any idea, which makes sense. Like if you're spending time with him and it's slow and gradual, it's not like movies where you cut to the last moment. But like, did he feel like when it was time to go that he could sense it? Or it was sort of just like
No, I think he
warning?
was like, again, he was a very religious person, and so he had this like I think faith that he was really gonna pull through it, because even though I don't know, it's hard to say because we didn't like he wouldn't let you know, so because I remember like sitting in the doctor's room, and when the doctor said like, listen, we're not gonna do any more treatments for you, like it's stage 4 and there's nothing more we can do for you. He's like, yeah, I understand, it's like when my time comes, it's come. It's like, okay. But then like when you get home, it's like, don't worry, it's like again like 20-50 more years, easy. So it's hard to like really gauge what was going through his brain, but I'm pretty sure he had a sense of it, because it's like, because when you go through these things, it's like, this sucks, and like every day looking back is like, oh yeah, the next day sucked more than the previous day, and like I could witness it retrospectively, but like he was going through it, so I'm pretty sure he was conscious of it, but like you don't really know when you're like it's gonna happen, because when he died it was pretty sudden.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it's not like it's like everybody around me as I like I
sometimes
want to
you
say
hear
goodbye.
about- I think it's different also whatever your spiritual practice is. It sounds like he was very like present and calm with you, which is good because it's like it doesn't sound like he was living in fear, which I think is like you don't want it's always scary, but I think especially for the person going through it, to have those last days be full of fear is probably not the best way to spend it. So it sounds like that wasn't the case. But sometimes you hear about people like just getting a feeling because they start seeing visions, which I think is interesting. I don't know. I don't know much about like, I haven't researched enough, mostly just hearing from like random documentaries, but that's always been interesting to me where people get really calm and peaceful at the end, like almost like in a like very like understanding way. So
Well, it could just be like his Buddhist belief too. It's like they have a different kind of understanding of life and
Yeah.
death. It's not
Yeah.
like
What's
your
next?
yeah, like it's not your traditional Judeo-Christian Abrahamic kind of religions.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, this is just one stage now. I'm going to the next stage in life.
Yeah.
And for his like girlfriend and for my aunt,
Yeah, I was gonna
no,
ask.
they-
So did he ever tell them?
yeah, they eventually they found out.
Oh gosh. Oh my gosh.
His girlfriend found out like just like a day or two before, and his cousin, which is like his sister, because like they kind of immigrated over here together. She found out like the last day because like I'm gonna visit you. Something's going on, and then like when they
she had a
saw
feeling.
him, yeah. So when they saw him, like they got so sad because it's like they were not expecting that, because he was hiding it.
Damn.
So yeah, but like
they got to see him.
they got to see him like the day before he died.
Wow.
And so, after that, they would constantly ask me, like, have you been dreaming about him? Like, has he been appearing to you in your dreams? Because evidently, like, that's a thing where it's like the spirit.
Yeah.
Like-
Have you?
Yeah, I dreamed about him a couple of times.
Oh, that's
But
really
like my
nice.
older sister, she has not because I think she's taking it the hardest. And so they say that, oh yeah, she's just not ready yet. Like he'll appear to her when she's ready.
Yeah.
But like
'cause
for
it's-
me, it happened pretty quickly. It's like, oh okay.
Oh.
I think my youngest sister, she experienced it first because she was with him when it happened.
Wow. How old is your younger sister?
She's like 30, let's
Oh,
see,
okay. I
32.
was imagining like a child.
We always do.
Yeah, right. When you
Yeah,
say
yeah,
your
yeah.
sister. That's really beautiful. I mean, it is so hard, but like it is, like you said, it is this, especially if you believe in like
Mm-hmm.
sort of the spiritual, like it's just one stage of life, but it doesn't make it, in the moment it's still hard, but you understand the big picture, which,
Well, I
helps
think
get
if
through
like
it.
you believe in like heaven or hell, it's like there's more anxiety attached to it. It's like,
yeah, sure. You're like,
what
where
the
am I
hell?
going? Did I get in? Yeah. But if you're like, there's that, my energy's going on.
Yeah.
It's interesting that your that his girlfriend and cousin came right before. Like I think there's something really serendipitous about that. I don't know. I feel like people, it does really speak to like the connection we feel, because there is a sense of, it's not like in a magical way, but sometimes like sometimes you get a feeling and you're like, I'll put it on snooze for a bit,
Right.
and then eventually you're like, trust your gut. And at
Yeah.
any point you could be like, nah, but you're gonna just trust your gut and show up.
Yeah.
I don't know. I find that like that's happened twice to me in a way where I'm like, like it's, these things happen. You never know. 'Cause you also hear about people being like one day too late. But like
Yeah.
my grandma, and she was old and she had pancreatic cancer, but she actually just died from old age. Is the wild thing is like the cancer didn't even finish. Like she was like strong enough and just old. But the weekend she was like in the hospital in San Diego, I was supposed to go to Bachelorette in the Bay, and my mom was like, got a call and she's like, I'm gonna go down and see her, but like you guys just come a few days later. But then I was like, I got a feeling, and I was like, I don't know. And she's like, it's up to you.
Yeah.
And of course nobody wants to say like you should, because it's like,
Yeah.
it's weird to be like, if you come to say goodbye and then they're fine, like nobody wants to say that. It's like, yeah, we all want more days, but like it's weird to be like, miss your thing, and then she's still alive. Like it's just a strange thing to do.
Right.
So everyone's like, do whatever you want, but I
Yeah.
was like, I'm gonna go. And
Right.
it was literally the last night. Like we went down, saw her, and then the next morning she passed, and it was like, wow, like, and that
Maybe it's because the bachelorette party was involved. It's like, see, dying grandma or bachelorette
I was
party.
like, I'd
Yeah.
rather skip the Bachelorette.
Yeah, it's like, how would I want to tell this story if like the worst case scenario happened?
Yeah, totally. That's how I usually see it. Is like, there's nothing wrong with seeing someone more than once. Like, it's funny to say that, to be like, oh, but what if they don't die? But it's like, then they don't. Like,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, that. And then with my brother, it was the same. It was literally the night, like literally the night before, because he was in a different situation, because he was like very out of it and mentally in a different place. But I wasn't so aware of how far he was. But I had that feeling like when I think you just feel when something's off, like energy wise, like the rest of the family might be trying to like deny it, but you can tell when the balance is off and people are like, no, it's fine or whatever. But then I was like, I literally like just didn't get on my flight and just drove up instead. And it was like that night I saw him.
Right.
But I do think it is, there's something really nice to be able to see them. Even if it's hard, it does help to be able to spend that last time with them.
I mean, yeah, and just to circle back to like with the benefits of therapy is like, whether or not therapy, I think the best thing about therapy is like you are given these tools in which like you can maybe cope or manage whatever is happening in your life emotionally, right? Even if like say you don't necessarily apply the tools, at least you have them.
Yeah, true.
And it may not be useful for you, but like, hey, it's like at least you're like, oh, like something is not what I think it ought to be. So let's maybe I'm not the person to investigate this, but like I can like at least see the signals or see the signs and like point that person in like the proper direction. Because like growing up without like I grew up like no one taught me anything. It's like I learned so much through television where that kind of warped my sense of reality. And like now I have to
the 90s.
now I have to unlearn everything I learned about from television because it's like none of that was real. Like I'm so upset about that. But
the 90s were really bad about therapy too, because it was always a punchline to be like, you need to go, or be like, I'm going to therapy. It's like, why? I thought you were fine. It's like,
yeah, but it's not even like the that specifically. I meant like everything in life. Like remember in the 90s where like Brussels sprouts, ew, like it's the worst thing. And then you
I've
grow
never
up.
eaten a Brussels sprout as an adult. Like it wasn't a thing that my mom cooked for me.
Yeah, mine either. But like I knew it was like the worst thing in the world as a child. And then when you have it, it's like fucking TV lied to me.
Yeah, I was like, pretty good. I love
It's
a crispy
fine.
Brussels sprout.
Yeah, it's like a cabbage. No one told me it was just a tiny cabbage.
Tiny cabbage.
Yeah. So it's just that with everything. Like when I find out about things like, I really shouldn't have listened to TV like people told me to, but I didn't know better because no one gave me like the tools to function in life. And like, that's one thing about therapy is like, for me, like I see the benefits. It's like, oh, you're just giving people more tools so that they can like understand life better.
More information. In a way, what you're doing as a comedian and writer is like, we don't realize that because we just kind of go on to express ourselves because we want to. But then for the next generation, like when what you didn't have growing up being represented, now they can watch you and hear your point of view and what you've learned. And you talk about stuff like, oh, I didn't know about Brussels sprouts, but now someone watching you growing up does. So you're kind of like creating this like positive feedback loop by addressing instead of like continuing a cycle of negativity, like you're actually learning and then like passing that back, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, it's like the best thing we could hope is like to pass on to like future generation is just like information.
Yeah.
And like correct information or however you want to define that, right? It's like at least
tools
just
to question too.
Yeah,
because it's
right.
like when you say things like, "Oh, I had to relearn things," instead of saying like, "Then this is the absolute right way now." You're giving people, future generations, the knowledge of like, oh, that means some things I know may not be true either, but I will cross that bridge when I get to it.
Right. It's like when you grow up and like you realize like everything your parents told you wasn't necessarily like, truthful. Same thing with like television. It's like, oh, this is just not how things are. Same thing with like all the media that we consume. It's like, okay, just be conscious that this is all for purely entertainment. They're all just trying to sell you a product. So it's like, just take what you can from it and then figure it out some way else. And like, that's where like, therapy or whatever people need to get that stuff.
I like that a lot. I think this is a great place to end. I think this was a really heartfelt confession, and I'm really grateful you shared it. And
great, because I was going in was like, oh no, what do I confess here?
Oh really? I mean, it's so like it is great, and it's, I mean, not great like in the same way where you say you're grateful for COVID, like, it's not like great that your dad passed, but in the way that it all came together and sort of you were able to spend this time, I think. And I think this is something a lot of people can, like, not everyone has the tools to be able to speak so eloquently as you can. And I think that it will help them to hear this. And, and I think other people are going through difficult times, and hearing your story and the positive stuff you came out of it with, I think will really help them.
We'll see. All right.
Yeah. Do you want to tell people where they can follow you, find your stuff, your comedy and whatnot? If you like
I'm
to
mainly
share?
just on Instagram and Twitter at David Nguyen.
Cool.
And then you can just check out Bad Asians, and then that's it.
Yeah, look, go listen to Bad Asians. There's a lot of great episodes.
Yeah, check
if you
out
haven't
Teresa's
heard mine,
episode.
you can listen to mine. And you can follow this podcast at Tell Me Anything Pod, and follow me at Larissa T on Twitter. And that's it. Goodbye.